Hey there, and welcome back to The Deep Dive. Let's be honest, for a lot of us, work can feel less like a place where we thrive and more like, well, a place where we just cope.
Yeah.
We're drowning in emails, right? Wrestling with messy files, calendars are just a constant battleground. It's the age of information overload and finding efficiency, or heaven forbid, joy amidst the chaos. It feels like a pipe dream sometimes.
It's incredibly common, that feeling, being overwhelmed, the endless stream of tasks, the sheer volume of stuff, physical and digital. It doesn't just steal your time. It drains your energy, makes it really hard to connect with why you started doing the work in the first place.
Right, totally. And what if I told you that finding that clarity, cutting through the noise, and actually bringing more joy into your workday might be simpler than you think? We're diving into some fascinating ideas today, pulled from the book Joy at Work, a collaboration between tidying guru Marie Kondo and organizational psychologist Scott Sonnenschein.
You probably know Marie Kondo from her whole approach to tidying homes, asking if items spark joy. This book takes that core philosophy, the idea of being deliberate about what you keep, because it contributes positively,
Yeah.
and applies it brilliantly to the complexities of the modern workplace.
Yeah, it's not just about sorting paper clips, is it? It's about applying that lens to everything that makes up your professional life.
Hmm.
Your physical desk, yeah, sure, but also your digital data, your time, your decisions, even your network and teams.
And they each bring a unique perspective. Marie translating her tidying principles, and Scott adding the psychological and organizational science behind why it works.
So, our mission in this deep dive is really to extract the absolute most potent insights and the practical steps from their work. We want to give you the tools to cut through your own work clutter and cultivate a more joyful, effective professional life.
Mm.
So, we're going to embark on this tidying journey together. We'll start by confronting the true cost of all this clutter and then, systematically work our way through tidying each key area: physical space, digital world, how you spend your time, decisions, network, meetings, and finally, teams.
A pretty comprehensive approach, yeah.
Yeah.
Starting with the tangible and moving towards the intangible.
Okay, let's unpack this by first facing the monster,
Right.
the high cost of clutter. And this goes way, way beyond just looking messy.
Absolutely. Psychology research shows that a cluttered environment isn't just an eyesore. It's like cognitive drain. When your workspace is chaotic, your brain is constantly processing the visual noise, right? The unfinished piles, the things you can't find.
Ah,
This taxes your mental resources, making it harder to focus on complex tasks.
so it directly hits your ability to concentrate, increases stress, anxiety, even messes with your decision making. They actually call clutter a magnet for misery, which,
Hmm.
wow, that really resonates.
It does. And when you zoom out to the business level, the costs are just staggering. Think about the sheer amount of time people spend looking for things. Studies suggest the average office worker spends the equivalent of one work week per year searching for lost items, papers, files, even digital documents.
One work week per year. That's wild. Over 4 years, that's a whole month just looking for stuff.
Yeah.
And they put a dollar figure on that lost productivity in the U.S. alone. An estimated U.S. $89 billion annually. That number it's huge. More than double the combined profit of the world's 5 largest corporations.
And that's just searching time. Add in the cost of unproductive meetings, estimated over $399 billion annually,
Yeah.
and you see that clutter and disorganization aren't just minor annoyances. They're massive economic drains.
Okay, but you know the old saying, or the idea anyway, that a messy desk can be a sign of a creative mind. Is there anything to that?
Well, there was one study that linked a messy environment to more novel ideas in a very specific lab setting. But the overwhelming body of research, and definitely the data in this book, points firmly towards the benefits of tidying.
Go on, just saving time and money. Organization is linked to higher evaluations of your capability, your character, which boosts your self-esteem, your motivation. And higher motivation correlates directly with better performance and ultimately more joy in what you're doing.
Okay, so the data is pretty compelling. Tidying is worthwhile. The book suggests starting with the physical workspace as the foundation. Why there first?
It's the most tangible, right? You can see the results immediately. And that initial success, that feeling of accomplishment, it builds momentum and confidence to tackle the more abstract areas like, time or your digital space.
Makes sense. And the core question, does it spark joy?
Mm.
How does that translate to work items? I mean, my stapler might be functional, but it doesn't exactly make my heart sing.
Right, exactly. It's not purely about emotional joy at work. For work items, you sort of adapt the question. You focus on whether the item contributes to your happiness and supports your work effectively.
Oh, They identify three categories of things to keep in your physical workspace. Things that genuinely spark joy personally, like a photo, a favorite mug, that kind of thing.
Mm.
Things that are functional and directly aid your work, your laptop, the necessary manual, basic supplies. And third, things you're absolutely required to save: legal documents, specific records, contracts.
Personal joy, functionality, and required items. That's a pretty clear framework. Let's go through the typical categories, maybe starting with books.
Ah, books. Yeah. Just like at home, the crucial first step is gather all your work-related books in one single spot. Don't skip this part. Seeing the sheer volume, the physical pile, it really helps you confront the reality of what you actually have.
Okay, yeah, I can see how seeing the mountain of books would make you more ruthless. Then you ask questions about each one.
Exactly. What role does this book play? Is it a reference? Does it motivate you, energize you, provide updated info? And crucially, would you genuinely buy or acquire this book now if you didn't already have it?
That's a good one.
It is. And a really valuable part of the process is acknowledging and thanking the book that has served their purpose. Maybe you bought it on impulse, it was a gift you never read, the info's outdated, or you have three others on the same topic. Books, like other things, they have a peak period when they're most useful to you.
Like that client in the book who dramatically cut down her office books to just 15, that really highlights how much accumulates that we just don't actively use or need anymore.
Shows what's possible when you're
Yeah.
intentional, yeah. Next up, the category that causes a lot of stress for people:
Mm.
papers. The basic rule the book advocates, and this requires real commitment, is to discard everything.
Discard everything. Whoa, that sounds terrifyingly freeing, maybe, but also slightly impractical for a lot of workplaces. How does that actually work?
Yeah. It definitely requires resolve. Papers are bothersome precisely because they accumulate so easily, right? And sorting them takes time. You have to read and process each one. The rule isn't really discard everything and keep nothing. It's more like assume everything can be discarded unless it clearly fits one of the few categories you decide to keep.
Okay, that distinction makes more sense. So what are the categories you do keep?
Three main types: papers that need action, things you're currently working on or need to respond to soon; papers that must be saved, required by law, company policy, essential records like contracts; and papers you genuinely want to save, reference materials you actually use, things that spark joy maybe, or items you truly believe you'll need for a future project.
Got it. And there are rules for managing the papers you keep.
Yep. First, apply that ruthless discarding principle: only keep if it absolutely fits one of those three categories. Ask yourself, will I actually need this? When? How often? Is it online? Is it saved electronically? Would it be a major problem if I didn't have this physical copy? And yeah, does it spark joy if it's in that want to save category?
Okay, be extremely selective.
Extremely. Second rule, store papers upright. Stacks are the enemy.
Right.
They just grow invisibly. They bury important stuff, make it hard to see what you have or how much. Upright storage, hanging files, boxes, keeps everything visible and manageable.
And third, have a dedicated pending box for daily action items.
Exactly. Process it regularly and discard papers from it once the action's done, unless, of course, they fall into one of the other keep categories.
Following this gives you a system then. You know what papers you have, where they are, and you set a physical limit with your storage. When it's full, you know it's time to reevaluate instead of just letting piles grow forever.
Precisely. It stops the endless accumulation.
What about all those office supplies that seem to just multiply on their own? Pens, staplers.
Office supplies, yeah. Divide them into desk supplies and consumables. For desk supplies, pens, staplers, scissors, that stuff. The key principle is you only need one of each type that you actually love using or that is the most functional for you.
Just one. I feel personally attacked right now. I probably have like 3 favorite pens and maybe 2 staplers, just in case.
You're definitely not alone. They mentioned a client who had like 8 staplers and 12 pairs of scissors. We just accumulate duplicates without realizing it because we don't know what we have, or we think having extras nearby will be convenient. Choose your favorite, most functional one, and let the others go. Find them a new home.
Okay, choose the one that sparks the most. Functional joy.
Let's go with that. For consumables like snacks or candy, check expiration dates, obviously, and set sensible limits on how much you keep at your desk. They also make this interesting cultural observation about seeing alcohol openly displayed at desks in some American offices, which is apparently quite surprising from a Japanese perspective.
Interesting point. Okay, last physical category. Sentimental items. This seems like the hardest one to be ruthless with.
It is, which is why they save it for last, right?
Yeah.
After you've built up your tidying muscles.
Yeah.
Gather all these items together in one spot. The crucial question here is, will this item spark joy at my desk, in my workspace, right now?
So it might spark joy overall, but maybe not in the context of your professional work environment like today.
Precisely. If something once supported you or sparks joy but doesn't need to be at work right now, thank it for its service and let it go from your workspace. Maybe it belongs at home, or perhaps it's just time to part with it entirely. If you have too many joy-sparking items for your limited desk space, definitely take the extras home.
It sounds like this physical tidying is more than just clearing space. It's almost a way to reevaluate your relationship with work itself.
It absolutely is. And they share some really powerful examples of how this initial physical tidying can trigger much bigger transformations. Lisa, who saw her sales improve dramatically after organizing her desk. Creative professionals finding renewed inspiration, an artist switching mediums, an illustrator discovering costume design, a pianist reconnecting with their passion.
And there was Kay, right? Who used her desk basically as a storage unit for relaxation aids because her advertising job is so stressful.
Yeah.
Tidying helped her realize she wanted to be less stressed and that those items belonged at home, which led her to cut back on overtime and shift her work habits.
In Mifuyu's incredible story, her physical tidying sparked a full KonMari of her entire work life. Digital data, contacts, projects, time. She became so clear on what brought her joy and added value that she actually left her corporate job to become a successful freelance commentator and author, working only on projects and with people she loved. Her transformation really highlights how the physical is often just the beginning.
Which leads us naturally to the digital world. Once the physical space is calm, the digital clutter feels even more oppressive somehow.
Look.
And email.
Oh, email.
Email, yeah.
It's arguably the biggest source of digital clutter for most professionals. The statistics are pretty eye-opening. The typical office worker spends about half their workday just on email.
Half the day.
Half the day. And over half of employees feel that email actually interferes with their real work.
Wow. That's intense. So much time lost just managing communications. And the book talks about common but ineffective ways people handle it.
Yes. One is creating this super elaborate, endless hierarchy of folders. You spend ages filing things away meticulously, only to forget where you put them later, and then you spend just as much time searching anyway.
Guilty. Or the opposite extreme, just letting it all pile up and then occasionally declaring email bankruptcy and deleting everything, inevitably losing something important in the process.
Right. A better approach is to shift your mindset and process email daily. Instead of endless folders, aim for a minimal system, maybe 10 or fewer folders total, including subfolders. The search function in email clients now is incredibly powerful, making those deep folder structures largely unnecessary. Related projects can often just live in one folder.
And they suggest some useful folders, like one for record keeping and even a joy folder for positive emails you might want to look back at.
Exactly. The key mindset shift for incoming email is similar to papers. Assume everything gets discarded unless there's a really good reason to keep it. And schedule dedicated time blocks for email instead of letting notifications constantly pull you away from focused work. That constant interruption is brutal.
So now, what's the advice if you're facing years of email backlog and feel completely overwhelmed? Where do you even start?
They offer a very practical, simple trick for this.
All right.
Archive everything from the past into one large, searchable folder. It's not perfectly organized, sure, but it gets the vast majority out of your inbox immediately. Then, commit to applying the new tidying system only to new incoming emails.
Oh.
This immediately gives you a cleaner slate and a much greater sense of control.
Okay, that's a relief. You don't have to KonMari your entire email history all at once. Just archive the past and tackle the present differently. They share examples like Tony, who changed his voicemail to manage email expectations, Sasha, who struggled with feeling constantly on call via email, and Scott, who keeps his own joy folder. That's kind of nice.
It is. Beyond email, they touch briefly on digital documents, recommending similar principles as papers, and suggesting a to-be-scanned pile for physical papers rather than scanning one by one, which can interrupt flow. They also mention tidying your smartphone screen, like Marie Kondo does, frequently used apps on the home screen. Others sorted into simple folders like business, life, and joy, keeping photos of her daughters visible for that daily spark of joy.
It really is about being intentional about every interaction, isn't it? Even with our devices. Okay, we've talked about physical and digital stuff. Let's talk about tidying something less tangible, but maybe the most valuable, our time. Specifically, what they call activity clutter.
Activity clutter. Yeah, that's spending time and energy on tasks that don't actually make a meaningful difference. Things like, Unproductive meetings we just talked about, projects that never seem to finish, spending hours polishing a presentation that really doesn't need it. They cite a statistic showing that people spend less than half their workday on their primary job responsibilities.
Less than half. That's shocking. A huge amount of time consumed by non-core activities. The book identifies specific psychological traps that lead us into this.
Right. The first is the over-earning trap. This is when you work incredibly hard, you feel really productive, but you're working towards goals that don't actually align with what you value or what brings you fulfillment. Hard work feels good in the moment, sure, but if it's wasted effort, it doesn't lead to joy. Scott Sonnenschein shared a personal story about falling into this himself early in his career.
Then there's the urgency trap. This is that tendency to prioritize urgent tasks over important ones. Urgent tasks often feel easier to just tick off the list, right? They give you that immediate gratification.
Exactly. While the important tasks are usually harder, they require more focus, but they're the ones that actually move you towards long-term goals and that joyful future you're trying to build. Be really mindful of fake urgency to arbitrary deadlines or manufactured crises. Stress makes us particularly vulnerable to falling into this trap, makes it harder to think clearly about what's truly important.
And finally, the classic, the multitasking trap. We all think we can do it, but the book brings up research that says, well, we really can't, effectively anyway.
Yeah, the research shows multitasking decreases productivity by up to 40%. And here's a surprising twist. Studies suggest the people who multitask the most are often the least capable of doing it well.
Really?
Yeah, they struggle more with filtering distractions, and they try to compensate by juggling multiple things poorly rather than focusing deeply on one thing at a time.
Wow, that's a sobering thought for anyone like me who prides themselves on juggling multiple things at once. So how do we escape these traps and actually be more intentional with our time?
The core solution is really to become truly mindful of how you spend your time and consciously shift your energy towards activities that genuinely spark joy or contribute to creating that joyful future you envision.
They propose the task pile exercise, similar to gathering physical items.
Yes, exactly. Write down every regular task you do, big or small, on an index card or maybe a spreadsheet. Seeing this entire mountain of tasks laid out visually forces you to confront where your time is really going. You categorize them. Core tasks, project tasks, developmental tasks. The act of seeing them, especially if you use physical cards, really aids reflection. Research supports that.
And then you evaluate each task using those familiar KonMari questions. Is it required? Does it help create a joyful future, thinking about raises, promotions, building valuable skills? And does it spark joy now?
Right. And if a task doesn't meet any of those criteria, the advice is straightforward. Stop doing it if you possibly can. They acknowledge limitations. Of course, your boss might require certain tasks, but encourage you to identify what can be discarded, delegated, or automated.
Christina's story here is incredibly relatable. She was completely overscheduled, saying yes to absolutely everything, totally burnt out, and her personal life was really suffering.
Yeah, she used this method. She visualized her ideal work life, having space to say yes to spontaneous things, feeling less angry. She exported her calendar, rated each activity based on those criteria, and found that nearly half her scheduled activities didn't bring her joy or contribute to her ideal future.
Wow, half. And by eliminating those unneeded activities and adding simple pleasures back into her life, like making dinner, workouts, seeing friends, it actually led to a chance encounter at an event and ultimately a new job offer that aligned better with her values and her time.
Her experience is a great reminder that not every single moment of work will spark joy. That's unrealistic. But the overall trend or direction of your activities towards a joyful future, that's the signal for change.
They offer other simple but powerful tips for reclaiming time too, like delaying saying yes immediately to new requests, giving yourself time to evaluate if it fits your priorities.
Yeah, research shows that little delay actually empowers you to say no more often to tasks you don't really enjoy or don't have time for. Also, adding a daily joy into your schedule, even just 5 minutes. Could be work-related if possible and beneficial, or something entirely outside of work, like Scott reading a physical newspaper, and creating clean space on your calendar, dedicated blocks of downtime for thinking, refreshing, creative work, rather than just packing every single minute with tasks. Research even suggests working less can sometimes lead to increased productivity.
So tidying activities isn't just about being busy, it's about being intentional and making your days genuinely better.
Exactly. It shifts your perspective from just getting things done to getting the right things done.
Let's move from tasks to something even more foundational, decisions. They estimate we make upward of 35,000 decisions a day.
It sounds like a crazy number, but most of those are low-stakes decisions we make on autopilot, right? Which route to the kitchen, which chair to sit in.
Mm.
If we had to consciously evaluate every single one, we'd be paralyzed. Like Lisa, the art teacher in the book, who felt overwhelmed by the thousands of tiny decisions she had to make daily across her different roles.
Then you have the high-stakes decisions. These are infrequent, they require significant resources, focused attention, things like setting major marketing strategies, making key hires, purchasing expensive equipment, big stuff.
Right. And the ones that often create clutter are the medium-stakes decisions. They require more thought than the autopilot low-stakes ones, but they're more frequent than the high-stakes ones. Things like improving a process, updating a product feature, deciding how to communicate progress to a team. These can really accumulate and drain mental energy if you don't manage them.
So the core principle here is figuring out which decisions truly deserve my limited time and energy.
Precisely. The strategy is simple. Forget about the low-stakes ones. Your brain handles those pretty well automatically. Sort and organize the medium-stakes ones to gain clarity. Reserve your focused energy and mental bandwidth for the truly high-stakes decisions.
Don't get bogged down agonizing over trivial choices if the outcome doesn't make a real difference, like which font to use in an internal memo or the specific brand of copy or paper. Just pick one.
Exactly. Gather all your medium and high-stakes decisions, maybe on index cards or a spreadsheet, just like with tasks. The high-stakes ones will usually pop out. There are normally only a handful. The bulk will be the medium-stakes decisions. The focus then is on identifying those that will notably make your work better or contribute significantly to a joyful future.
And you process this pile with the same questions again. Is this decision required? Will making the right choice here help create a joyful future? And does engaging with this decision spark joy now?
Yep. If a decision doesn't meet those criteria, can you discard it? Delegate it. Automate the process so the decision isn't even needed anymore. The goal isn't to be involved in every decision, but the right decisions, the ones that matter.
Lisa, the art teacher's story, is a great illustration here again. Putting all her decisions onto cards made her see the massive volume that was overwhelming her. By applying the criteria, she identified repetitive decisions and ended up eliminating 9% of them entirely and automating or delegating another 40%.
That freed up so much mental space for her to focus on the creative decisions that did spark joy. And the result wasn't just a tidier decision-making process. It led to clarity, renewed optimism, she tripled her business income, improved her personal life, and eventually gave her the confidence to leave teaching and focus entirely on her own business. Amazing.
Wow. They offer specific tips for handling choices too, which is like a subset of decisions. If you're faced with multiple similar options and many are good, just pick one and move on instead of agonizing forever.
Right. Put choices in a common sense order if you can. And remember, more choices aren't always better. They can be really overwhelming if you don't already know what you prefer.
Tidying decisions forces you to focus on what truly impacts your work and future, removes that mental clutter, connects you back to your goals, and even makes the big, difficult decisions feel less daunting because you've cleared away all the noise. Leads to feeling more engaged and satisfied.
Definitely. It brings clarity.
Okay, let's talk about people. Specifically, tidying your professional network. The conventional wisdom is always build the biggest network possible, right?
And the book challenges that directly. Having a large network doesn't automatically mean you have a meaningful or effective one. It might just mean you've accumulated a lot of contacts. Those trackable metrics like LinkedIn connection counts can feel good, sure, but they don't equate to the quality or importance of those relationships.
Yeah, there's a limitation to how many meaningful connections humans can actually maintain. Studies suggest around 150 is a reasonable number, and most of our really significant interactions come from a much smaller subset anyway.
And the truth is, many connections in a very large network might only reach out when they need something, which can be pretty draining. Christina experienced this with her large Harvard MBA network, lots of requests, fewer genuine connections. Karen in the book found reduced anxiety by focusing on a smaller, higher quality network.
Marie Kondo herself apparently prefers deeper relationships with fewer people and found that trying to build a massive network for her business initially went against her natural inclination.
So the KonMari approach to networks is really about understanding what kind of connections genuinely enrich your work life and spark joy for you.
So you evaluate your contacts platform by platform: LinkedIn, Facebook, your phone contacts, email lists, those old business cards piling up. Imagine your ideal work life. Who do you genuinely want to be collaborating with, learning from, or simply enjoying interactions with?
And you keep contacts who? genuinely spark joy, you actually enjoy connecting with them, help you grow, mentors, collaborators, people who challenge you in a good way, or are necessary for your job, essential clients, key team members. If a contact doesn't fit one of those criteria, you're given permission to delete, stop following, or mute them.
It also means being more selective about new connections, doesn't it? Delay accepting requests, maybe. Don't feel obligated to attend every single networking event. This intentionality frees up your time and energy for the connections that truly matter.
Absolutely. It allows you to focus your limited social and professional energy on building deeper, more fulfilling relationships that actually support your work and your joy, rather than just, collecting contacts like baseball cards.
Next up, a universal pain point. Meetings.
Ugh. Meetings, yes. A classic source of work clutter and frustration. The statistics are pretty bleak. The average office worker wastes about 2.5 hours per week just in ineffective meetings. The majority of senior managers report being dissatisfied, seeing them as unproductive. We already mentioned the immense cost annually. It's huge.
So how do you KonMari a meeting? Where do you even begin?
You start by visualizing your ideal meeting. What does it look like? More importantly, what does it feel like? Is there a clear purpose, a goal? Are people engaged? Is there active listening, respect, maybe even some productive energy or fun? Do you walk away with clear outcomes?
Okay, set the intention for what a good meeting would be like. Then gather your meetings.
Yes, list all the meetings you attended in the past week, even those quick, unscheduled huddles in the hallway.
Yeah.
Note the name, time, frequency. Seeing the total time commitment laid out like that is often shocking, just like with the tasks.
And then you separate the messy meetings from the irrelevant ones.
Yeah, try to excuse yourself from meetings that are truly unnecessary ones that don't help create a joyful future, don't spark joy, or where your presence isn't really essential to the outcome. You'd be surprised how much latitude people sometimes have if they respectfully decline or suggest just being updated afterwards.
Uh-huh.
Tony, the marketing pro we mentioned, became much more selective after realizing meetings were stopping him from doing his actual work.
Right. Messy meetings, the disorganized ones, no agenda, dominated by a few people. Those can potentially be improved. Irrelevant ones should just be avoided entirely if possible.
And challenge that mindset that attending more meetings makes you seem more valuable or important. Your value comes from the contributions you make, not how many meeting invites you accept. The goal isn't to win the most meetings attended award, right?
Huh, right. But what if I'm not running the meeting? Can I still do anything to make it better?
Absolutely. They frame meetings as a shared space. Everyone has a responsibility to contribute to a productive environment. Don't use meetings for self-serving purposes. Rule number one they suggest is simple. Show up and really show up. Be present, be engaged, radiate positive energy. Your presence, your attention, it matters.
And for those who are leading meetings or want to influence them, there are key principles for running a tidy meeting.
Definitely. Have a clear purpose, an agenda, and ideally circulate it beforehand so people can actually prepare. Start on time, every single time. Encourage participation, specifically invite input from less experienced members, and check in with those who are quiet. They might be disengaged because they don't feel their contribution is valued or needed, which might mean they shouldn't even be there.
And think carefully about timelines. 30 or 60 minutes are standard, but often totally arbitrary. Meetings rarely end early if they're scheduled for longer than needed. People tend to mentally check out after about 60 minutes anyway.
Right. Consider scheduling shorter meetings. Maybe reduce a standard meeting by 15 minutes. Moderate time pressure can actually spark creativity and keep things focused. But avoid replacing one long meeting with a whole series of frequent short ones. Those constant interruptions can be more tiring and less productive than consolidating issues into one focused 45-minute session.
They even suggest trying standing meetings, where there's no table or chairs. Research indicates these can lead to more dynamic interaction, creativity, collaboration, and they almost always end faster.
Good tip. Finally, always end with a recap. Thank participants, summarize progress made, obstacles identified, solutions found, get public commitment to decisions made. This helps prevent those back-channel disagreements later on.
The vision is clear then. Meetings that are actually energizing, that you maybe even look forward to, that make real progress, and ideally give you some time back by ending early. And that's a collective effort.
It really is. Everyone plays a role in tidying that meeting space.
That brings us to the final area for tidying, teams.
Right? Work teams come in different forms. Your core department team, temporary project teams, Both involve collaboration, navigating different viewpoints, working together to generate ideas and achieve goals.
And it makes total sense that if your teams aren't functioning well, it's going to be incredibly hard to experience joy at work.
Absolutely. When teams are in sync, work feels energizing, you're more productive, it's just more enjoyable. Disorganized teams, on the other hand, are a huge source of wasted time, frustration, and stress.
So how do you tidy a team? Sounds tricky.
Like with meetings, you start by visualizing your ideal team. What does it look and feel like to you? Do people respect each other? Is there open communication? Do you feel valued? They use that powerful example of hospital cleaning staff who transform their whole perception of their job by seeing themselves as critical members of the patient care team, not just cleaners. That Shempton mindset created a much more unified, joyful team.
Then list all the teams you're currently on. Sort them into two piles. Teams you're happy with and teams that need improvement.
Exactly. For each team, ask those familiar questions. Is this team required for my job? Does being part of this team move me closer to my ideal work life or future? Does being part of this team bring me joy right now?
Even in a team that's currently messy or frustrating, the book suggests looking for something to value. What can you learn from the dynamic? Who are you closest to on the team? Is there a piece of the work itself that is worthwhile? Finding some positive anchor.
Yeah. They also address common team issues like lack of participation. This often stems from a lack of confidence, not laziness. Leaders, or really any team member, can help by specifically acknowledging and valuing the unique contributions of others, especially less experienced members, to help build that confidence.
Trust is presented as absolutely essential for a tidy team.
It's huge. High-trust teams focus their energy outwards, towards collective goals. Low-trust teams see effort turn inwards, leading to individualistic behavior, conflict, arguments, little collective accomplishment. Trust acts as a buffer, preventing misunderstandings from escalating and reducing burnout and that tendency to carry work problems home.
They even contrast brainstorming, which can be inhibited by low trust if people are afraid to share ideas publicly, with brainwriting, where ideas are written down first, which can be more effective in some situations. Interesting.
And personal conflicts within a team. The advice is to actively clean them up. Avoid getting drawn into gossip or drama. Recognize that complaining together might feel like bonding, but it's often a fragile connection built on negativity. Understand that challenging ideas isn't necessarily a personal attack, especially when trust is present.
And take responsibility for cleaning up your own messes. Take the high road, apologize when needed, clearly state your desire for partnership. While sometimes egocentric orientation in others might make reciprocity difficult, keep trying to set a positive example.
Team size also plays a role, apparently. Optimal size is often cited as around 6 to 8 people. Larger teams tend to accumulate clutter, communication breakdown, diffusion of responsibility. Marcos's story is powerful. He reduced his 15-person team down to 7, helping teammates find better roles elsewhere, and the resulting smaller team was dramatically more organized, joyful, and efficient.
And know what specifically sparks joy for you in a team context and be willing to share that. Also, make an effort to understand what sparks joy for others on the team. Marie Kondo's husband, for example, found unexpected joy in the complexity of team management, which wasn't something he initially anticipated.
The takeaway is clear. Team success and tidiness are everyone's responsibility. When teams are tidy, it brings joy not only to you, but it tends to radiate to everyone around you.
So you've gone through this whole process. You've tidied your physical space, your digital life, your time, decisions, network, meetings, and teams. It feels transformative, right? But how do you sustain it, especially when you're working with others whose habits or maybe the company culture itself might be, well, less tidy?
Yeah, that's a real challenge. Individual tidying is a powerful gift to control you give yourself. But sharing that positive energy is really key to sustaining it. Small actions can inspire big changes in a workplace. Don't underestimate your ability to make a difference, regardless of your position. Let your tidying be visible and be ready to explain why you're doing it, what the benefits are for you.
You could also suggest collective actions, maybe, where appropriate for your workplace. Propose a company-wide tidying day, advocate for canceling non-essential meetings, suggest scheduled email-free time blocks, or even start a small tidying community at work.
And simply caring for the shared workplace space beyond your immediate area can make a difference. Picking up a piece of trash in the hallway, like Scott's father did at his motel, can set a small, positive example. You can also subtly help tidy a messy meeting by asking for clarification of the agenda or gently steer an out-of-control email chain back on topic. Little nudges.
And a critical piece of sustaining joy seems to be how you interact with the people you work with. The book really emphasizes treasuring your coworkers. Don't take colleagues for granted. Treat everyone with respect, regardless of their status or role.
Yeah, they suggest scoring yourself on things like how often you express thanks, recognize contributions, honor individuality, give colleagues the benefit of the doubt. If your score is low, that's an area to focus on. Gratitude is just fundamental to a joyful work environment.
Authentic gratitude doesn't require grand gestures, right? Just specificity and sincerity. The Zappos WowW's program, where employees send notes recognizing specific helpful actions, is a good example of fostering that kind of culture.
Caring for what you keep extends to the physical items you use for work, too. Maintaining your tidy desk space and even taking a moment to thank your items, your laptop, your favorite pen can add a layer of meaning and respect to your tools, just as Marie Kondo practiced in her home life. It sounds a bit quirky, but it fosters appreciation.
Adding things that spark joy to your workspace, beyond just being tidy, is also important. Think of it like interior designing your desk or office, maybe. Choose pens or a pen holder you love. Decorate with photos of loved ones or plants that make you happy. The book notes that American offices often have more personal decoration than Japanese ones, and points to places like the themed Airbnb offices as examples of really bringing joy into the physical space.
The tidying process itself can also reveal bigger truths about your career path. If, after tidying everything, your current job still doesn't spark joy, don't feel pressured to immediately quit. First, evaluate specifically what doesn't bring you joy. Is it the commute, a particular client, the tasks themselves? Can changes be made within your current role?
Your story is perfect here. She thought she needed to leave her job at a food manufacturer because her passion was accessory design. But after evaluating, she realized changing her commute and client assignment and consciously finding balance by pursuing her design passion in her spare time allowed her to stay in a job she now actually enjoys.
Assessing your current reality clearly through the lens of joy is preparation for whatever your next step might be. Letting go of what isn't working is a necessary part of moving forward. And if you discard aspects of your job or career with disdain or resentment, you're likely to repeat those problems. Instead, thank those experiences or tasks for what they taught you, even the tough ones.
It's also important to embrace growth and experience, right? Work, especially meaningful work, is built on accumulated experience, and not everything will spark joy all the time, especially in the beginning.
Absolutely. See challenges and difficult periods as growing pains that are building towards a more joyful future state. Don't view a lack of constant joy as failure. Recognize the potential for growth and learning within those moments. Marie Kondo herself experienced significant stress as her business grew rapidly, forcing her to learn the value of delegation and collaboration, which ultimately brought more joy back into her work.
Overcoming fear, particularly the fear of criticism, is also vital for pursuing your vision. Marie Kondo was initially terrified of engaging with social media.
Yeah, she sought advice from a therapist who gave her some blunt but liberating counsel. Plenty of people hate you already. This apparently shifted her perspective dramatically. She asked herself if rejecting her past due to fear of criticism sparked joy. The answer was a resounding no. Taking the leap led to unexpected support and growth for her.
And finally, to sustain joy, you have to tidy your internal space too, letting go of the past. Don't clutter your mind with old fears, anxieties, past failures, or criticism. The human brain has a natural negativity bias, right? Gives greater weight to negative emotions and experiences.
Exactly. Fixating on past failures or criticisms just distracts you from present tasks and hinders future goals. The book suggests a method similar to discarding items. Write down those negative thoughts or anxieties on a piece of paper. Truly honor the message they held or the lesson they taught you, and then physically destroy the paper. Rip it up, shred it, keep the lesson learned, but consciously discard the self-criticism and the negative emotional baggage.
And perhaps most importantly for sustaining joy and productivity, prioritize time for yourself and your family. Schedule this crucial downtime first, then fit work around it.
This might mean saying no to certain work opportunities, yes, but saying no with gratitude for the opportunity allows you to focus effectively on the work that you do keep, the work that truly sparks joy or contributes to that joyful future. Marie Kondo and her husband intentionally prioritize family time, which they believe leads to a better attitude, clearer communication, and increased productivity when they are working.
And remember, success is rarely achieved in isolation. Acknowledge and be grateful for the collaborators who contribute to your work, employees, partners, consultants, mentors, even your audience or customers. Marie Kondo realized this deeply as her work expanded. Scott's extensive acknowledgments list in the book is a testament to the many people who contributed to their work.
Sustaining joy is definitely an ongoing practice, not a one-time event. It requires conscious effort, gratitude, and setting boundaries, both internal and external.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive into joy at work, the overarching message seems to be that applying these KonMari principles to your professional life isn't just about achieving neatness or decluttering for efficiency's sake. It's fundamentally a process of active dialogue with yourself.
Exactly. It's using the act of tidying your physical space, your digital life, your time, decisions, network, meetings, teams, using that as a lens to identify what you truly value, what genuinely supports your work and your well-being, and what sparks joy or leads you towards a joyful future.
It's about taking back control, increasing your focus, reducing stress, improving your relationships with colleagues, enhancing your creativity, and ultimately making your work life feel more fulfilling and, yes, hopefully more joyful.
It's a powerful invitation, really, to be more intentional about every aspect of your professional existence.
So, here's a thought for you to carry forward after listening to this deep dive. Look at one specific area of your work life that feels cluttered right now. Maybe it's your overflowing email inbox, a chaotic section of your shared drive, your constantly interrupted calendar, or even just the dynamic of a specific team you're on. Ask yourself, what is one small thing I could tidy in this area today that might make a tangible difference? And beyond the immediate tidying, what does that clutter tell me about something bigger I might need to let go of, change, or prioritize to bring just a little more joy into my work?
Thanks for listening. Visit our library and subscribe below for more book summaries. This has been a Sprint Reads production.